Welcome back. So as promised, here's the video about ramen. We're going to define what ramen are, what they are made of, and how they developed. Right, first things first. We're not going to start with a clear definition of what ramen are. Instead, we're going to have a look at what ramen are made of, and then talk about why it is so hard to come up with a definition in the first place. We're going to orient ourselves on the categorization as presented by the Shin-Yokohama Raumen Museum for now, according to which ramen are made up of 5 things: broth, seasoning, noodles, toppings, and oil. And just a little aside, the museum itself uses 5 categories, but its website mentions only 3, which caused me to have to re-record some of this. So please don't wonder if some of this sounds even more off than usual. Take this as a reminder that there is no final authority on cultural matters. There will always be another way to look at or interpret things, and there will rarely, if ever, be a case in which there are no exceptions to a rule. But back to the topic at hand. We're starting off interesting here. Most European soup is made from one singular broth, which is what gives the soup the main body of flavor. But ramen broth tends to be prepared in 2 separate liquids and then combined. The first one of these is the broth. In Japanese it's called chintan, or if it's cloudy, paitan. And it gives a base taste as well as most of the liquid to the ramen. It's made from many things, usually bones like pork or cow, but also mushrooms, often dried, algae and vegetables. The deciding factor here is umami. Umami is one of the 5 major tastes as well as a flavor enhancer, which makes for a very good basis and improves the taste of the other ingredients, namely the toppings, but those come last. Since the broth is the basis for everything, it is in many ways the heart of the soup. Consequently, many chefs extend a lot of effort on the broth, including many different ingredients that cook for hours, even days before it is ready to serve. This makes it hard to make some broth and their corresponding types of ramen at home. So while chin or paitan by itself is on the subtle side, it's full of umami, which enhances the other flavors that come later. The second part of the broth is a seasoning, called tare in Japanese. Tare is another interesting thing. Honestly, all of this is interesting. I hope. The term is probably best translated as dipping sauce and is used very often on other things like yakitori, teriyaki and yakiniku. The tare of ramen tends to have a different recipe, but like with the other dishes, it is a thicker, more flavorful liquid. It actually tends to be put into the bowl first because that way the broth mixes with it when you pour it in. Tare, being the seasoning, has a stronger flavor, so you need a lot less of it than stock for the broth. Since the seasoning is the more notable flavor, many chefs guard the recipe closely, keeping it even from their cooks so the recipe cannot be copied. And you'll also notice that miso and soy sauce already have a lot of umami in them. So most ramen have at least 2 kinds of umami, and with salt being another flavor enhancer and other umami heavy ingredients like fried mushrooms, bonito flakes and dashi being common components to the tare, there's a lot of enhancing of flavors going around. Noodles are straightforward by comparison. We're talking soba noodles here. That means long and thin like spaghetti, but not quite. See, there's a lot of variance to be had in the exact ratio of the ingredients and how thick or thin, straight or wavy the noodles are. But the main ingredients are flour, salt, water and kansui, which is an alkaline mineral water. Kansui does several important things, many of which are as complicated to explain as they are unimpressive. Suffice it to say, it's important, and it's what gives the noodles their distinctive yellow coloring and taste. Common wisdom is that straight, thick noodles are better for thick broth, and thin, curly noodles are better for thin broth. This rule holds true for other kinds of food, by the way. The thicker the sauce or soup, the more readily it will stick to your noodles. To a point. Don't smack some udon on a piece of jello and come complaining to me when it won't stick. A more runny soup, broth or sauce will flow from the noodle easier, so thinner noodles and noodles with frilly bits are better suited for holding the things that want to flow their own way. Back to Japan. Toppings are probably the most varied category. That's not to say that other categories don't have variations, simply that this is the most diverse one. Basically, the toppings develop the flavor established with the broth, giving it more character, as well as making the whole thing look nice. That's why they tend to be added last and on top of everything else. That makes the difference between this, and this, boo. Pork, bamboo, egg, spring onions, naruto nori and so on are among the most popular ingredients. But really, the sky's the limit. Aroma oils are the final ingredient. It allows all that flavor that the toppings provided and the stock and the seasoning enhanced to really get around. Many ramen chefs also believe that the oil helps the soup stick to the noodles, which, if true, additionally helps carry the flavor while eating the noodles. There are countless types of aroma oils, all of which fall into two categories. Oils made from something flavorful, like sesame oil, or oil infused with something flavorful, like chili or garlic oil. The oils give the ramen the final kick, the last bit of oomph needed, and are very often left for the customers to add themselves, thus allowing the customer to season the dish to taste. Which brings us neatly to the topic of just how many variations there are. Many. The museum alone showcases over 50 different types of ramen, most from Japan but some from abroad as well. See, ramen is less of a recipe and more of a type of food. The thing is that there isn't a clear definition of what ramen is. There's a set of common components, but what is or isn't ramen almost comes down to presentation. It is ramen so long as you give it a sense of ramenness. Consequently, there has been some experimentation. I have eaten Italian-style ramen with bacon and mozzarella, and the museum itself has things like ramen with two-tiered broth and Sauerkraut ramen. Sauerkraut, by the way, is a lot like sauerkraut, but pronounced properly. Those were just among the most extreme examples I came across. There is a lot that can be done with even less melodrama. Miso-based thale, for example, is a relatively recent development. The point is, it's all delicious. I mean, look at this. There's a bit of a ritual to eating ramen, by the way. After saying your itadakimasu, you're supposed to start by drinking a bit of the broth before digging into the noodles. It's fine to just eat the noodles and the toppings. You don't have to drink all of the broth, but there's nothing stopping you either. Now that we have a bit of an idea what ramen actually is, let's talk history. No, wait! I'll keep it short. For now. Like a lot of Japanese food and culture, really, ramen is heavily influenced by Chinese culture. The first reports of noodles based on lye water, which is how Chinese noodles are made, appearing in Japan are quite old. 15th century in fact. And there is reason to think that Mizukuni Tokugawa, a prominent 16th century daimyo, ate the first dish that might generously be considered ramen. Things only really got going in the 1900s. Before that, Chinese noodles had entered the Japanese market and even become popular as a luxury food. But since no recipes or images survived, there's little evidence to suggest that it resembled modern ramen. But in the early 1900s, after China lost the Sino-Japanese War, there was an unprecedented influx of Chinese students into Japan. Many restaurants sprang up, catering to the taste of the students. But since students are famous for their wealth, and the fact that they don't have any, this was the time that Chinese noodles first became affordable. In 1910, Lai Lai Ken, the first recognizable ramen restaurant, was established in Asakusa. The ramen consisted of a broth made from soy sauce, pork and chicken bones, with pork, scallions and bamboo as toppings. The chefs were Chinese. At this point you may be asking, what exactly makes this ramen instead of Chinese noodles? Which, first of all, don't interrupt. Secondly, Chinese noodles were seasoned with salt, not soy sauce. Obviously. That's how the food came to Chinese students, and it became more and more popular over time. But things got even more going over a decade later. See, there was a lot of tuberculosis going around in those days, which is caused by a lack of animal proteins and fat. It is because of this, and the tendency of Chinese cuisine to cook ingredients as opposed to the raw fish of many Japanese dishes, that Chinese cuisine came to be viewed as safe and healthy. Ramen started appearing in cookbooks. But still, ramen remained most popular in and around campuses. But that changed with the Great Kanto earthquake in 1923, a topic to which we're probably going to return a couple of times. For now, let's just say it was in 1923 in Tokyo, and it was bad. Over 100,000 dead and countless more homeless. Important for us is the wave of migration it caused. While cheap ramen sold from food carts remained popular in Tokyo, many chefs fled the city and resettled in other parts of Japan. This decentralization of ramen cuisine allowed for the varied local tastes we see today to develop. This new and exciting development of course stalled soon after under the rationing of the Second World War. But quickly after the war, and I mean within 5 days, black markets sprang up. Some of them were apparently right in front of national train stations, so I'm not sure just how black those markets were. I think the museum calls them black markets because they were unsanctioned, not because they traded in anything necessarily illegal. Apparently, there was also a lot of land grabbing in the post-war period. I know for a fact, or more accurately, for an anecdote, that there are several stores on grounds that used to belong to Himeji Castle. Apparently, people literally set up shop there after the area had been bombed, and by the time the government was able to react, they didn't want to just kick everybody out, so they let them stay, but with some conditions. We're getting off topic. Significantly, this marked the first time that there was a majority of Japanese chefs. Until then, tradition had still been to hire Chinese chefs. In 1951, Morito Omiya, a miso lover, started selling ramen with diluted miso soup to salarymen who missed the soup while away for work. His store, Aji no Sanpei, added the miso ramen officially to the menu in 1954. He kept fine-tuning the recipe, but miso ramen was born. It spread quickly through Sapporo and beyond, with restaurant chains being established and opening several hundred stores within just a few years. Now instant ramen were invented by Momofuku Ando in 1958. Up until then, even though recipes for home use existed, it was hard to actually make ramen at home because you needed a lot of ingredients, some in quite small quantities. Seeing just how many people were lining up to the restaurants after the war, Ando tried developing an easily prepared version of the food. He developed chicken ramen in his shed with help from his wife, using a method based on tempura to deep fry noodles, instantly removing the moisture. The food quickly became popular and proliferated the name ramen for the first time. Up until then, it had been called Chinese-style noodles. Other companies started producing their own versions. In 1971, Ando developed instant ramen. For some time before that, he had been trying to get into the American market, because, money. But the dish didn't quite take, so Ando flew over there to find out why they hadn't taken to the food. When he showed his instant ramen, not a euphemism, to somebody who didn't have a bowl at hand, they put the noodles in a cup. Tada! Invention of cup noodles. Since then, ramen recipes have diversified greatly. For example, seabura chacha, which is to say pork backfat sprinkled ramen, which was introduced to restaurants in 1975. But I honestly don't know what that means other than that pork backfat is in there. It's not a dance apparently. Ike ramen, with a combination of soy sauce and pork bone based broth, was developed by a truck driver, who developed a taste for the two styles of broth which were popular in different parts of Japan, and who opened his own ramen shop. The pork bone ramen Ike ramen were based on became known as tonkotsu. Tsukemen, a type of thick noodle, dipped into a strong broth with fish powder added, was developed by restaurant staff with leftover boiled noodles they would dip into broth after hours, so as not to waste food. Now, tsukemen don't quite fit in with other types of ramen, and they're usually seen as something different too, but they were developed from ramen. Again, the definition is rather vague, and we're a tolerant bunch here. This classification of types of ramen indicates that the food is well enough known, not only for different recipes to develop, but for people to recognize these different subtypes too. There were other events, quite apart from the development of new recipes. A gourmet boom in the 70s. In the 80s, Kitakata became a famous tourist attraction for its distinctive ramen culture and got so swamped with tourists that they couldn't serve everyone. This also inspired a series of imitator towns, like Sano, Onmichi or Shirakawa. There was a more specific tonkotsu ramen boom in the late 70s and early 80s. The establishment of the Shin-Yokohama Raumen Museum in 1944 started a booming interest in local ramen sold by the museum, more on that in the other video. And finally, there was a boom, probably fueled by the internet, where focus shifted for the first time from types of ramen and locale to the chefs preparing them. This granted a degree of stardom to specific chefs that hadn't been seen before. These days, ramen are popular all around the world. Not just instant ramen, though probably mostly instant ramen. There are ramen shops all over the place, many founded by Japanese immigrants. These shops, like their Japanese counterparts, often develop their own flavors, with some recipes even making their way back to Japan. Just recently, the first ramen restaurant received a Michelin star. And now we're all caught up, I think. Do with this knowledge as you will.